What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Michael Knapp Fishing. We are in the fishing room again today. We're going to do a little more talking about, today we're going to tackle fishing line, but we're going to talk about what is the difference between monofilament, fluorocarbon, and braid, and what should we be using. Alright guys, so everybody, if you're watching this, I assume everybody knows what braid, monofilament, and fluorocarbon are. If you do not, we will show real quick. This is braid. It is a very strong fibered line. It is hand braided together and creates this extremely strong with a very small diameter line. This particular one is a 65 pound test braid, Sufix advanced braid. It is 8 braided fibers. 8 fibers are put together to make this line, and it has the diameter of 17 pound monofilament. So it's got 65 pound test resistance, but it is as small as 17 pound mono. So next we will go with fluorocarbon. And get that tape off there so I can show you guys. Fluorocarbon. I don't even think you're going to be able to see that on camera, to be honest. Maybe a little bit. Okay, fluorocarbon, completely clear. Almost no stretch whatsoever. Fluorocarbon also sinks. That is one of fluorocarbon's properties that makes it very useful for jig fishermen, worm fishermen. That's why you throw fluorocarbon with those. Cranking, jerkbaits, stuff like that. That's why we throw fluorocarbon. Jerkbaits not so much. Sometimes jerkbaits are the weird ones. We're not even going to dive into that today. Second, third, where is our monofilament? There's our monofilament. Monofilament. Let me get this out for you real quick, because this is actually a brand new box I haven't even opened. Monofilament, if you'll walk, let me get my hands in there, has stretch. A lot of stretch, okay? So, but monofilament was really kind of the golden standard for a long time. You know, that's what everybody used was monofilament, because fluorocarbon wasn't out yet. So those are kind of the differences between monofilament, fluorocarbon, and braid. Some other differences, obviously braid, very visible. Fluorocarbon is almost completely invisible in the water. Obviously the bigger the line, the more diameter you have, so it's going to be a little more visible. You're going to be able to see it. It doesn't reflect sunlight all that well, so it's not going to be seen as easily as, say, monofilament. So now that we know the 3 differences between those, let's talk about when to use which line and why we want to use these. So braid. Obviously the braid is the obvious one. You know, we're talking grass when we're throwing a frog, when we're throwing a buzzbait, when we are in any kind of dirty water that we can get away with it, is kind of the way I look at it. If we are, if we're on Cherokee Lake, we're fishing up in the river, just had a massive storm, it's chocolate milk. I'm talking, it is so dark you can't even see your lure a foot down. You have 6 inches of visibility. I'm going to run braid. And the reason I'm going to run braid is because those fish are going to be held to cover, very tight to cover. They want to be able to feel secure, and that's where they're going to go. They're going to find somewhere with cover. So if I can get away with throwing braid, why wouldn't I? Because I have no stretch at all whatsoever. I have the maximum power to get them out of there, and I don't have to worry about breaking. I can get them out of the thickest stuff. So I'm going to run braid for that. Some other techniques that I use braid for, flipping and punching. If we're on, say, Gunnersville and we're out there flipping the grass, there's rare occasions I will use fluorocarbon, but 9 times out of 10, I'm going to throw braid. A lot of people ask me, okay, what size braid do we use? Okay, frogs, punching, flipping, Anything to do with heavy cover, 50 pound to 60 pound. That is kind of where, I'm sorry, 50 to 65 pound, right? Yeah, 65. That's kind of where I stand in there. A lot of people, one of the complaints I get about the Sufix is the 65 pound is a little stiff, which it is. It's very stiff right out the box. You kind of have to use it a little bit, let it get a little water on it, and kind of let it form a little bit, and then it becomes very usable. So one of the other times that I use braid is in the winter time on a Alabama rig. This is something that not a whole lot of people do, but it is, it's not a necessity. You don't have to do it, because I actually threw an Alabama rig for years on fluorocarbon. I have no problem with it, except for the fact that fluorocarbon does get brittle when it's cold. So you gotta watch that a little bit with the smaller lines. But I chose to run braid on the Alabama rigs because I fish a ton of rock. I mean, ton of rock. And the reason why I run braid on those is because when I'm coming across that rock, I get hung a lot. I mean, a lot. But the key to it, the braid, it's a heck of a lot easier for me to pull on it and bend out one of the hooks that got caught than losing that whole $30, $40, $50 rig. Trust me, I know some of these boys out here, they spend $50, $60 in one Alabama rig. I don't. I go cheap. But either way, it's still a lot of money in those baits. So I run braid so I can bend those hooks out and pull them right up to the boat as soon as it gets hung. I don't have to worry about going in after it, all that jazz. Second reason that I run braid, when it's cutting through the water and I do get a fish on, or I catch a second fish on that bait, or you are just ultimately lucky and catch a third fish on that bait, because we can run 3 hooks in Tennessee. I've got the pulling power to be able to get that Alabama rig back. So those are kind of the reasons why I run braid on an Alabama rig. Now, there is one other, it's not a technique, but one other time that I run braid, and I've done this for the last few years now. I really like it a lot better than what I was doing. The pros do it. Everybody I've talked to does it now. And that is running braid on our spinning rods. So I run 20 pound Sufix braid. And I'm going to try and show you all this real quick. See, I don't even know if you can see it. It's very thin. Very thin. So the advantage of running the braid is that, one, you get no more coil out of your line. You know, if that line has been on your spinning rod too long, it starts to coil, starts to loop, you start getting wind knots, you start getting all this other garbage, and it's just a royal pain in the butt to use pure fluorocarbon the whole time. So I stopped doing it. So I now run almost all braid. All braid on that spinning rod, and then I put a leader on. It varies. Some of my rods have 20 foot leaders. Some of them only have 10 foot leaders. Some have 5 foot leaders. It isn't really a visibility thing for me, because that line it's very thin. I will never run straight braid to the bait. I will always have at least a 5 foot leader on it for vision purposes. But the braid no longer coils. It no longer gets wind knots in it. It no longer loops out of your reel and gets tangled all around in the gears. You don't have to worry about all that jazz, and it has no memory. That's the great thing about braid, 0 memory. So you don't have to worry about any of that other hassle. So let's talk about monofilament now. When are we going to use monofilament? It's one of those deals that a lot of people don't like to use monofilament anymore, and I'm not really sure why that is, because I personally have a few techniques that monofilament is key, and I'm going to tell y'all what those techniques are. But if we'll go back, remember the differences between monofilament and fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon has no stretch. Monofilament stretches, okay? So here's when I use my monofilament. Anytime I am throwing a top water treble hook bait. So whether that be a Strike King Sexy Dog, a Zara Spook, a top walker, a pencil popper. I'm struggling to remember treble hook baits all of a sudden on top. Pencil poppers, small little scatter pops by Rapala. Anything that is a top water bait with treble hooks, I'm running monofilament. Why? A lot of people are like, no, we run Braid, we run Fluorocarbon. No, I run monofilament. Braid is too strong. I don't like Braid for those baits. I like to have stretch to it to give it more action when you're walking it. Fluorocarbon sinks. So when I throw out that big old, what have I been throwing lately? Oh gosh, what is that thing? It's an I'm a pencil popper, and I can't think of the name of it anymore. But it's a big bait. Big bait. And you got to throw that on big line. So I was throwing it on 17-pound test fluorocarbon. I'm sitting there walking. I'm like, what is this thing? It's not walking right. What is it doing? So I made about a dozen casts with it before I finally realized, hey, the fluorocarbon's sinking. So it's naturally tilting a little bit in the water. It's not popping correctly. It's not walking correctly. It doesn't look right. Switched it over to 20-pound monofilament, and that joker just walks now perfectly because monofilament will sit up on the water. It doesn't sink as much as fluorocarbon does. So that's when I use the monofilament. Another time that I use the monofilament, this varies. This is going to get a little bit of hatred, I'm sure, about the monofilament. The other time that I will run monofilament is when I need to go ultra finesse with a bait that does not get used very often, I don't feel anymore. And that is a grub. This technique is not used a whole heck of a lot anymore, but back in the olden days when things got tough, people would take an itty bitty lead head, kind of like a crappie jig, put a little grub on it, ultra finesse line. I'm talking a light rod, light tackle, 8-pound, 6-pound, 8-pound test line, bomb it out there and just reel it across the top of the water. And that used to get a ton of bites. A lot of people like fluorocarbon for that, but I personally rather monofilament. And the reason for that is because it's now serving as a little bit of a top water bait. It's able to keep that head up a little bit more if I reel it fast enough, and that tail will start to kick and imitate kind of like a whopper plopper, but just a lot smaller. So that's one of the other times I use monofilament. That not, like I said, that's going to cause a lot of controversy as to whether or not who does it and all that jazz. That's not up for debate, guys. I'm not going to sit here and defend myself. I've had a lot of success on monofilament with that, so we're just going to leave it at that. So, fluorocarbon. We all know fluorocarbon kind of became the hot thing, the big deal. That is what you needed to be throwing. Everybody knows fluorocarbon I throw probably 90% of the time. I love fluorocarbon. That is my go-to for everything. And my go-to for fluorocarbon is Sufix Advanced 17-pound test. It's just what it is. Everybody knows that. That's what I've always thrown. So, fluorocarbon pretty much covers everything else that we didn't talk about. I'm going to give you prime examples though. My jig fishing. I always have 17-pound test fluorocarbon on a jig. Just do. No questions asked. No if and or but. 17-pound test. That's it. If I am going to be flipping big jigs in grass, I'll go up to 20. That's the only time I change. But 17-pound test. Even in the winter time. In the winter, when I'm finessing with finesse jigs, I still throw a 17-pound test. And it's got to be like 5 foot of visibility for me to change that. So jigs. Cranking. We all know we crank with fluorocarbon. I crank with 10-pound and 12-pound fluorocarbon. That is my go-to, just my choices. Spinnerbaits, vibrating jigs, chatterbaits, rattle traps, you name it. Anything else that I didn't name is all fluorocarbon, guys. Fluorocarbon is the key to all of my success with these big fish. That's what I prefer to throw, because of the power it has and the fact that you cannot see it very well. So guys, that was kind of my overview of the fishing line world and kind of what how I do things with the fishing line, the diameters and and what I use, when I use mono, when I use braid, when I use fluoro, all that jazz. I hope it wasn't like just a lot of information thrown at you. But like I say, guys, we're trying to put out some more videos. It's busy season. Actually, I think I told you on the last video, but it's busy season right now for me, wedding season stuff. So my time on the water is very limited. But we're trying to put out as many videos as we can still for you guys. We're going to stick to that schedule of Tuesday and Friday, 2 videos a week for now. I may bump it up at a later time when, you know, I don't have to work. But that's the plan for now, guys. Don't forget, we do have Tackle Warehouse gift cards now hidden in our videos. 1 a month in a random video somewhere. I'm not going to tell you which one it is, but there is a Tackle Warehouse gift card hidden somewhere in these videos, guys. I really appreciate y'all watching this. If you liked it, hit that like button. Leave me a comment down in the comment section below. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on those notification, guys. I really appreciate it. Take care, y'all.